Welcome back to the Blitz and Kick podcast, where we cover all football all the time.
With the first pick in the 2023 NFL Draft.
All right, guys. This week we are covering defensive linemen. We did skip O linemen. We will come back to O linemen for our player rankings, which will come out at the end of February. If you didn't see our post today, we are going to cover linebackers and Senior Bowl coverage next week. Then we'll give you a very special Valentine's Day mock draft. Then we'll hit cornerbacks and safeties, and then we will give you our player rankings, and then it'll be March. And Kyle, March is combine and mock draft season, so lots of great content for you guys coming up. If you're just joining us, we are about to jump in. Kyle, we're going to hit those edges first. Who's first on our list of draft eligible edge rushers?
Yeah, I would say number one. Number one, number two, and number three. I think they're interchangeable from what we've seen last year and then this year. But our first guy we're talking about right now is Dallas Turner, the outside linebacker, defensive end from your team, Alabama. Listen, he might be the best athlete of all the edge rushers. We'll definitely see when Combine comes, but I thought he stood out when Will Anderson was there. I remember watching him last year. I thought he made enough plays on his own. I don't know if he was eligible to come out last year, but I feel like if he was, he would have gone pretty high. Great quickness, great bend, speed. You like all that from the edge position. Now he's 6'4", 240. He's not the biggest guy, right? I think when you see that 240 mark, and even if he dips under a little bit, that's not ideal. You look at a guy like Nolan Smith last year who dipped to 238. I think that's a big reason why teams are kind of strayed away from him a little bit, just because he doesn't weigh that much. They're kind of afraid that he'll get whipped in the run game. And I wouldn't say Dallas Turner has gotten whipped in the run game in college, but he could be better. And obviously he could put on a lot more weight. But my pro comp is Manny Lawson. Manny Lawson was this really long, lanky defensive end, played for the Bills a little bit, the 49ers. Best fits for Dallas Turner, Brad, I have the Falcons, who I believe they pick at number 8. They're always looking for pass rushers. And then the Saints, too. We've talked about time and time again, the Saints really need to reload on the defensive line. Marcus Davenport, remember, left for Minnesota last year. Cameron Jordan's ancient. Dennis Allen is still there, right, somehow. So I think defense is a necessity for them, kind of reloading that pass rush. And I think both teams make sense for Dallas Turner.
I agree. I did like your comp for Manny Lawson. I'm going to be Debbie Downer on Dallas Turner, actually. He is a good complementary piece to another guy.
Okay.
I didn't like him by himself in that superhero role like Will Anderson was, of just when it comes down to it, we expect X guy to make a play. That's not Dallas Turner. Great athlete, like you said, great guy, great off the edge. But I wouldn't say that he's the number one guy. And that's a great comp for Manny Lawson, because watching a lot of what he did, it wasn't the stuff that you're going to write home to mom and say, "Ooh, Manny Lawson just, sacked this guy for like 20 yards." You're not going to see that. But he made key blocks. He made key inside cuts into some of the gaps and forced the ball where he wanted it to go to help somebody else. And I think Dallas Turner fits that really well, is that he will be a great complement on a defense. I don't think he'll be the number one star. And honestly, the Falcons picked up a lot of pieces over the past couple of years that just haven't come into their own that could be that number one guy. And I think Dallas can come in and kind of help them out to develop to that next step.
Yeah, I mean it'll be interesting to see where these guys end up. But we can go on to number two here. We have Latu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Um,
Latu.
Latu, and a lot of teams probably have him as their number one edge, right? Um, he started his career at Washington, I believe, and then he kind of had some kind of a neck injury, and the school's medical staff forced him to basically retire. But he came back; he's fine. With UCLA, a lot of production, 6'5", 265, very similar size to Josh Allen, but I would say he plays a little bit more like Trey Hendrickson. Trey's a little bit shorter, but if you know Trey from the Bengals, just very underrated. Like no one talks about him, but I think in terms of hand usage, he's one of the best defensive ends in the league. If you play Madden at all, anybody out there, he never got that development upgrade. He was always at normal or star. Like he was never a superstar, even though like he can win with the best of them, right? He can make tackles spin around. He can push guys into the quarterback, make him work for it. I don't think he has any glaring weaknesses. He can stand up or play in the dirt. Ideal size, strength. He's very good in speed to power or power to speed. Very good with his hands. He knows what he wants to do. But personally, when watching him, he's not the most flashy. And I think that's kind of why I put Trey Hendrickson there because, right, we don't talk about Trey Hendrickson. I don't know if we're ever going to be that excited about Latu. But in terms of doing everything at defensive end position, I mean, the Bears could use that, obviously, next to Montez Sweat. And the Vikings obviously could use that too because Danielle Hunter's a free agent. They need a long-term pass rusher. And I think this guy, he can stuff the run and he can rush the passer. So not a lot of guys, can do that very well. And like I said, I think that his hand usage and his ability to win in different ways, I think that's going to come into play. I think some teams are going to fall in love with him.
I'll have to disagree with you on like a little tiny piece of this. I think he's the best natural edge rusher out of the three of them. He's just built for that position. The Bears would have an absolute steal because, like you said, he's not LeBron. But he's also not Anthony Bennett. Like you got to find the in between there of what he is. And I think, like you said, Montez Sweat would be a good partner for him to be with. So if you guys don't know, Kyle and I do weekly mock drafts, if not daily mock drafts, of just, okay, what if this team picked this? What would leave on the board for this? And I got to pick 9 today, and I was very close to sticking Latu with the Bears because if the Bears go Caleb Williams Latu, that makes sense. If the Bears go Caleb Williams receiver, that makes sense. So either way, it's going to hinge on what they do at 1. If they stay at 1, if they keep 1, we'll monitor that as the weeks come up. But I like Latu to the Bears a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends what the Bears do. If they keep Justin Fields, trade back, I think he'd be a really good trade back candidate. Get him and get a receiver, or get him and get an offensive lineman. Like you can stack up some pretty good picks here if you're smart. So we'll see what the Bears do. Yeah, I mean, I like him a lot. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he flashes, but he's not exciting. But that's not always a bad thing, But I think he is athletic, so I don't think like he's like not athletic. He's slow. I think he's juiced up. Yeah. He's twitched up. He's got all the things that you need. I just wouldn't say all of his plays are the most like splashy.
Yeah.
Unlike the next guy, Jared Verse out of Florida State. I think he's splashy. He's not electric in terms of his speed, but my gosh, you should watch him put linemen on their butt. He will run through you. He's a wrecking ball. He comes in like a wrecking ball, throws people around with no regard for what's around him. Sometimes that's really good. Sometimes that's not what you want in terms of a pass rush plan, but man, he goes through people. I linked him to Ryan Kerrigan here, very similar size. Best fits, I have Cardinals and Seattle. Listen, I think the Cardinals are definitely searching for some edge rushers. I don't know if they're going to go quarterback in this draft, but if they don't, you need to build from the defense. You need to build from the lines out, right? And if Gannon's your head coach, he only really rushes 4, so you need your front 4 to be really good. So I have him for the Cardinals, and then Seattle as well, who I believe just hired Mike McDonald, if I'm correct. So, coming from that Baltimore Ravens, I think, the pass rushers, they really don't care the size or the speed or they just want guys that know how to rush the passer. And, he could have come out last year, I think, and probably been a top 15 pick. But, I think everything that you want in a pass rusher, he's gonna do his best just to get to the quarterback and really fill some lanes too.
Yeah. And to your point about Mike McDonald, another one of the things that he likes to do as a defensive coordinator is have rotations. He likes rotational piece guys. And I don't know about you, Kyle, but I can't really think of any edge rushers that are terrifying in Seattle. They've tried to address that need for 2 or 3 years now, and they just haven't hit on what they want to do.
I believe they got Boy Mafe last year, but
yes,
again, like rotational right now, so they can definitely continue to invest.
Yeah. Let's go 4. 4 is Chop Robinson. I'm not going to take your boy from you. You can talk about your boy. You go ahead.
Well, I love Chop Robinson. If you don't know, his mother named him Pork Chop because he was a bigger kid, so short Chop. So Pork Chop Robinson, Chop Robinson.
I love that.
Yeah, I love it too. It's a really great name, especially for a defensive end. It's we should have a podcast just who has the best names in the NFL draft this year, and then follow their careers to see how they do. Because I'm a big believer in if you got a cool name, you might turn out. So, but this guy comes from Maryland.
Pig Cage. Hold on. Pause. I'm so not kidding.
Pig Cage. No, I believe you.
Where is he now?
I don't know if there's a difference between cool and weird, but I'll keep talking though. But yeah, so
go ahead.
Chop, you can find it. Chop came from Maryland, transferred into Penn State, and he's lightning quick and explosive. He might have the best first step out of any pass rusher in this draft. I mean, when he gets around, like super quick, and he's really aggressive too. He hits hard. He's very powerful in his lower body. I think he's going to run really well. Very aggressive. I think they have to use that to their advantage, though, right? Like if you want him to be his hand in the dirt, stuffing running lanes, being a 2-gap or being a 1-gap kind of guy, like he has to be on the edge, and you have to put him in different placements along the defensive line. Like put him over the center. He was very good over the center this year. He showed his willingness and his strength to push back the center, deflate the pocket a little bit. So if he has an aggressive defensive coordinator, a guy that values pass rush and can put him in different ways, he's really going to excel. So I liken him to Von Miller. That's a little bit of a tease, but I don't think he's going to be Von Miller, but they do have similar size, weight. And then the teams, I have the Rams and the Texans. I've seen many mock drafts for him to go to the Texans with D'Amico and pair up with Will Anderson, and that would be a great duo. So,
100%. I do like Chop Robinson. I would almost disagree with you and say instead of 3 guys, there's 4 guys that you could talk about being interchangeable. It just depends on what style of edge rusher you're looking for.
Yeah,
but I'll give Chop props. He should be in that conversation.
Yeah, they're all very, very different. Well, next guy, we have Braylon Trice out of Washington. It comped him to Frank Clark, 6'4", 274. Frank Clark was 6'3", 270. Best fits, I have the Buccaneers. I think this is a Buccaneers kind of pick. And then the Ravens, like I said, like they just want guys that know how to rush the passer. I don't think that they really care on body type or height, weight, just guys that can stick and rotate in. Got a very thick build, can set the edge, great motor. Again, not very flashy, not very fast. I think he's going to win a little bit later in a pass play. I don't know if he's going to win like right off the snap. If you're looking for him to win quick, I don't think he's going to do that. But I think he can push the pocket a little bit. I think he uses his hands pretty well. I think he sets a good edge. But if you want a guy that can rush a passer really, really quick, it's not your guy. But I think he's going to give you everything he has. He's very aggressive. He's relentless. He's going to get some cleanup sacks as well. He's going to push the pocket, like I said, but I don't think he's going to win quick. So when I watched him, I wasn't too excited with his prospects. If you're expecting him to come in and get the 10, 12 sacks right away, I don't think he's going to do that. But I think he can be a really good starter and a really good rotational piece. But I wouldn't expect him to come in and be the team's leader in sacks, or I don't think you're going to have to game plan specifically for him. But I think he can be a really good defensive end too for a team.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, he strikes me as a Ravens guy. I wanted to say this when you brought him up, as this big, thick guy that just gets in and makes a play. I think he's what the Ravens wanted Odafe Oweh to be when they drafted him. But Oweh just never quite got to that starting spot. He's a good rotational piece. He is.
Yeah, not yet. Maybe he's got some. I'm holding out hope for my boy. We'll see.
I am too, because I was very happy with that pick. Let's go ahead and go to Chris Braswell. You know who I like better than Dallas Turner? Chris Braswell. Here's why, Kyle. I know you have your own stuff written. I love the pro comp. I love the fits. He is that guy that you want to come in and you rely on to make a big play. He is not the most explosive. He is not the flashiest, but boy, can you count on him to come in and wreck the offense and disrupt what they're trying to do. And that's what Braswell is to me. And if you're going to talk about best fits, the Eagles need that. They need that kind of hybrid guy that can play back in coverage and still be able to rush the passer. He could almost play over the middle and play like a linebacker position, which is where the Eagles seem to struggle every year. I don't know why you guys don't want to address that position, but here we are. But Braswell would be good. You could probably get Braswell day 2. Makes sense for the Bills too. I don't know what's happening with Von Miller.
But he's at the end of his career.
Yeah, he is. You're going to need a young guy to kind of take that kind of spot, and Braswell's it. What did you have on Braswell?
Yeah, I comped him to Joseph Asai, who's on the Bengals. Now, I think a lot of people remember Joseph Asai for making that boneheaded play against the Chiefs a couple years ago. But in terms of length, so Joseph Asai is 6'4", 260. Braswell is a former 5-star guy. Didn't really get his chance to shine. Why? Because Alabama cycles in pass rushers, elite players every year. Like, you're behind a lot of good guys, so that makes sense. I don't think he has as long of arms as I thought, but watching on tape, man, he uses them really well. He's very good at disengaging, using his long arms to go around people, and that's a skill. It's a skill that, if you have long arms and you don't use them, why do you have long arms? Why don't you use them, especially if you're a pass rusher? So, getting his long arm out there on the edge, I think that's where he's probably going to play specifically. Getting there out on the edge and then bending afterwards, I think he can really do that pretty well. And then he might not have the greatest first step, but man, once he gets in the backfield, he's a really great burst. He can win in multiple ways for you. He might not set the best edge that you want. He's not going to have his hand in the dirt, but again, kind of like Chop Robinson, you want him on the edge. You want him on the outside making plays. You want to move him around a little bit. I don't know if he's an every down guy, right? I don't know that quite yet, but I think you can get him on day 2 and at least know, hey, he's going to rush the passer, and there is potential for him to be an every down guy. Again, the traits are there, the 5-star talent, the athleticism is there. He doesn't have much experience yet, but he's shown a lot of good flashes, and sometimes flashes get you to day 1, day 2, and get you up there. So I think there's a lot to like about Chris Braswell. I'm excited to see how he runs in the combine, because I think that's going to rise up his stock a little more and more if he does well.
Especially to your point of he wasn't an every down guy. He wasn't an every play guy for Alabama. Dallas Turner was meant to be the number 1 guy for our defense when Will Turner left. He almost matched Turner's sacks by being a rotational guy. That's pretty good. I would take an absolute flyer on this guy and hope for the best. So I like your points on that. I'm always going to talk good on Chris Braswell. He saved us in a couple key games. He really did. So Yeah, that's hard for me not to be high on him. But seriously, you're right. Day 2 guy, take a flyer, see what he's made of. He might be it for you.
Next, we have another Penn State guy, Adisa Isaac, 6'4", 248. Comped him to Julian Okwara, who's 6'4", 240. I think his best fits are with the Patriots or with the Lions, who I think needs a little bit more juice to their pass rush game. He's long, he's explosive, and while he looks thin, he does play with power. He gets in the backfield a lot. A little bit of a late bloomer to the football game.
Thin. Look
What's
at his
that?
arms, bro. Thin.
Oh, I'm saying
Thin.
like okay, not his arm, like upper, like he was
Okay.
super thin. Like 248 is not 270. I think like if you want the 6'4", 270 guy, that's not him. But I think what I'm saying is I think even though he looks a little bit thinner than some edges, he's pretty good like stopping the run. So like on some running back carries where there could be a stretch play or an inside zone, whatever it be, he crashes down on the edge pretty hard, and he can knife in the backfield and get the running back from behind. He does that very well as well. So late bloomer. So I think he still has room to develop and get better, get stronger. He doesn't just sack people; he gets TFLs too. I think he's still very raw, but kind of like Odafe Owa in a way, because they're very similar. And I know this because I'm a Penn State fan, when they were recruited. So they weren't like these 5-star guys. They were kind of like 3 and 4. They started out at like 6'4", 6'5", in the 200s, and they tacked on that way. They tacked on that way, got that muscle, got that got that weight on them. So I think they're very raw coming into the draft. But I think there's a lot to grow and a lot to mold. And I think he does have some skills already. I think if he puts in the work, he's just going to continue to excel and improve.
I love your Lions fit. I had to comment on that quickly. I think the weakest point of the Lions after watching the game against the 49ers was their defense, and it was their front line. I think it'd be nice to have some complement to Aiden Hutchinson, so he's not the only one creating pressure on an entire defense. It struck me Micah Parsons a little bit, but at least Parsons has better help than the Lions do. So Adisa Isaac would be a nice compliment to Hutchinson. I think a lot of these guys aren't going to come in to be the number one guy, but he would be an interesting 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not all these guys are number ones, but I mean, you look at some of the teams that are left, some of the teams that were in the thick of things in the playoffs. You need pass rush, you need defensive lines to show up. The Niners their defense is built on their front four. The Chiefs have Chris Jones, and they drafted George Karlaftis high, and Omanahu, who just tore his ACL, like really counted on him to come in as a backup and provide them with some juice. The Ravens cycle guys in and out, right? And then the Lions, I don't think they have the greatest front four, but they have invested a lot into the defensive line, specifically with obviously Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, guys like that. So like you need it, and I don't care if you're a little bit light on the D line, you need it. I don't care if you're heavy on the D line, you need it. Like it is a necessity to continue to play football in January and February. So keep that in mind when we have these comps, right? Not all of these guys are going to be first round guys, but I think they can provide good depth, day 2 or day 3 for some of these guys.
For sure.
Next up is Marshawn Nealon. So he's kind of new. And I'll be honest, I put him in our list after I saw that he was on Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. And I was like, hold up, who's this dude? I don't know. So I had to go up, look him up, watch him a little bit. A pretty good size for an edge, 6'3", 268. I have him comped to Josh Pascal, who's on the aforementioned Lions, I believe. Best fits, I have the Bengals and then the Bears. Again, maybe like a day 2, late day 2, maybe early day 3 kind of guy. I still have to watch more of him to see if he can reach into that first round. I don't quite see it yet. I mean, he's good in the run game, right? With that size, he has long arms, heavy-handed. We like that. Good strength. I think he still needs to improve on his pass rush plan, his pass rush games. Like Western Michigan, right? If you're going to be drafted in the first or second round and you went to Western Michigan, I would hope you would have more than 4.5 sacks on the year. That's not like super impressive to me. However, I think he has a lot of things that teams look for. He's had a lot of tackles in the backfield. Very aggressive. He's got a lot of juice. And high motor, right? We throw out that phrase, high motor. A lot of teams like that. A lot of teams use it. If you have a high motor at defensive end, you're probably going to rack up some good tackles, some hurries, some pressures, whatever it may be. But yeah, I think he's a solid player, and I'm excited to see more about him.
Me too. Hopefully, that's a bad joke. I'm not going to say that. I was going to say hopefully he'll be better than just a knee, but we'll see. Let's hop on over to Jonah Ellis. And this is the one guy I didn't really get a chance to get to, so I'm going to let Kyle take this one.
Yeah, he's an interesting player. About 12 sacks on the year for Utah. That's pretty impressive, right? We like to see that. Different kind of body type. I have him comp to Alex Highsmith. I think they look very similar. Highsmith from the Steelers, and he's kind of a complement to TJ Watt. And I think just like Brad said about getting complementary guys, I think he could do that for a team. He's pretty good again with his arms, with his hands, kind of getting that length out there, using that to his advantage. He knows his pass rush plan. He knows what he wants to do. He's done pretty well against the weaker offensive tackles in that division. Very physical as well. He might not be the quickest guy. You can kind of see he labors a little bit. An average bend, he's not going to bend around you that much. But in terms of getting his arms out at length, pushing guys back into the backfield, getting his hands up when he can't win, I think he can do a lot of kind of unseen things for your team, or small things for your team as a pass rusher that can really help. He has had a lot of injuries over the last couple of years. That's not great. He's missed like 7-8 games. His father actually played in the NFL. And his brother, if you know, Caden Ellis, plays for the Falcons. His other brother, Christian Ellis, plays for the Patriots. And his other brother, Noah Ellis, practice squad guy for the Eagles. So a lot of juice and a lot of NFL bloodlines there. I think that's good for him. So I think he can come in right away and be a good backup or contributor in year one.
Cool. Brandon Dorless. I love the pro comp on this.
Yeah, Justin Matabuki is my pro comp for Brandon Dorless. 6'3", 272. Matabuki is 6'3", 300, but I believe Matabuki came in a little bit lighter than that coming into the NFL, I believe. I'll have to double check that. But my best fits for Brandon Dorless are the Texans and the Oakland Raiders. He's built like a D tackle, but he's played a lot of edge, a lot of defensive end. He's played in space quite a bit too. 9 pass breakups, great power, great energy, great length. He's kind of that tweener hybrid kind of guy. So that might be where he falls a little bit, like it's kind of difficult to place where to put these guys. Like, is he big enough to play in a 2-gap kind of scheme in a 3-4 defense? Or can he be in a 1-gap scheme at D tackle, a little bit lighter of a D tackle, and maybe get a little demolished in the run, but at least he shows some upside as a pass rusher. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where he lands. Maybe a team will want to get him on a program and get a little bit bigger because they think he can play with that, more weight, and he can slide into the D tackle. Or does he have enough functional strength to play in a 2-gap scheme in a 3-4 defense? So that'll be interesting to see where he lands with that. But I like him a lot. I think he's at the Senior Bowl right now and doing pretty well. So
My question for you: do the Raiders draft Tyree Wilson a compliment or as a replacement? Because he was not good at all as a rookie.
Yeah, you didn't have a great year. I think for the Raiders specifically, um, they've made some mistakes. They've made some mistakes with drafting guys based on production and not enough guys based on traits and athleticism. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, right? But I think Brandon Dorlus kind of gives you the best of both worlds there. He is productive, and I think he does have some twitched up athleticism to him. But again, I think he could play some defensive end, but I think he can slide into D tackle too. I don't really know of the Raiders having any kind of juiced up, athletic, scary guys on the interior. I feel like that's kind of what they've been lacking recently. We know about Max Crosby. We know about the potential of a Tyree Wilson, but I feel like the Raiders are one of those teams that and before Max Crosby, what did they have? Jerry Tillery, Bilal Nichols. They're not going to provide you much juice. They're big guys, right, with not much ability to rush a passer. So I think if you put him in there at D tackle to provide a little more energy to that defensive line, I think that could be nasty because you don't want Max Crosby just to be there alone on an island and everybody double teaming him, and then he's screwed, right? We saw that happen to the Browns, and what did they do? They went out and got just a bevy of pass rushers and D tackles, and Myles Garrett is the better for it. So you can't double team Myles Garrett if you have these other guys that you have to contend with. So I think it'd be smart for the Raiders to just keep getting running mates for Max Crosby. It doesn't matter if you drafted Wilson last year. I don't care if you think he's a bust, or I don't care if you think he's going to be the next Myles Garrett. You still need to invest, and you still need to get more juice along the defensive line. And Antonio Pierce is a defensive guy. I would assume that if linebacker's not high on his wants, I'm sure defensive line would be. So, just providing some more juice to that Raiders defense, I think, is the way to go.
Makes sense. Oh, that didn't do anything, did it? There we go. Sorry.
Next up, we have Austin Booker, another kind of riser here. So Austin Booker from Kansas is 6'6", 245. Pro comp to Max Crosby, who we just talked about. So Max Crosby is 6'5", 250. Best fits, I have Booker to the Bengals, and then to the Commanders. Commanders, as we know, traded away everybody along their along their edge group. So I think reinvesting in that is a good way to go. Great first step, long arms, good explosiveness, can get a little off balance at times, but he knows what he's doing. He's rushed a passer before. You can tell he knows what he wants to do. He needs to fill out a little bit more, right? The 6'6", 245, it's a little light. You kind of probably want him at 255, 260. So I think he'll need to grow into that a little bit. But I think he can play right away. I think he can set a good edge. Needs to fill out a little bit, but I think everything you want from a technique perspective is there. And he produced pretty well at Kansas too. So he might be one of those guys that gets drafted late day 2 or early day 3, and then kind of has that home run development and eventually gets better and better and becomes your team's best pass rusher. So I think the traits are there. But he just needs to, fill out a little bit more and get a little bit stronger.
Makes sense. Our last edge rusher. One of the reasons, Kyle, that Missouri was so successful this year was their defense. And you had this guy tagged for the Senior Bowl, and we added him because, I think 43 pressures. I need the right words. Sorry, I'm going to fall apart here. 43 pressures this year, 8.5 sacks. That's pretty good. That's on par with some of the first round guys. 29 solo. Danico Autry was a great draft comp. I had to watch Danico Autry a little bit because I couldn't remember where he played. Played with the Titans. Kind of a little bit of a tweener, kind of in between. Can be flexible. I'm not even going to say the Steelers. Just the Steelers could take anybody on here, and it would be the most Steelers move ever, just like the Ravens. The Patriots, however, this would be a really nice compliment to Christian Barmore. And that was my first thought when you put the Patriots on here, was that Barmore has that power to him, but it'd be nice to have somebody that's a little smaller that has the speed to him. So you kind of have a both and instead of a same or either or. And Darius Robinson kind of fits that bill. I like him. I'm glad you added him. I had to do research on Darius Robinson and Nico Autry, so I did the most research on this part right here. But Patriots, I like that Patriots fit, especially with Jared Mayo, defensive guy. And didn't he play defensive end also? Linebacker?
Played linebacker for Tennessee. Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Patriot way is just going to go away. Like, I think they're still going to be inventive and still aggressive in getting these defensive linemen with different kinds of body types and guys that can just rush the passer. Like, I think defense is still going to be very important for them. I think quarterback should be number one on their list for sure. But after that, I still think they're going to invest heavy into the D-line. I did see a few comps too to Chris Jones for Darius Robinson. So that would be pretty cool. Like, you don't see that very much. 43 pressures from like an inside kind of guy, 6'5", 295. That's impressive, especially in the SEC too. Like, that's, some teams are going to continue to do their homework on this guy, and he could rise into the first round. That's a interesting body type, but he's massive, and he's quick too. He might not be quick enough to play on the outside every down, but teams are gonna teams are gonna find a way to put him on the field. I also wrote he doesn't have a hard time disengaging from blocks because he's so long. He doesn't get stuck anywhere, right? He's kind of uses his long arms to get around, uses his quickness to his advantage, and then knifes in and makes some plays. So it seems like he has a pretty easy time of getting off blocks, and it's kind of why he's made all those pressures, all those tackles, because not a lot of guys can really pin him down and get him stuck, which that's pretty important in the NFL. So,
yeah. We will hit DTs in a second, but first, let's hear from our sponsor. Fresh Cuts has been one of our amazing sponsors since day one. Slide on over to Fresh Cuts, talk to Caleb, because it's not just a haircut, it's an experience. Book with him now. Mondays are his most available days, but you can hit him up anytime for a fresh cut. Cool. Let's kick it off with probably a guy that, to me, Kyle, could either go in the top 10 or he's going to slide to the middle of the first round. But he has the potential. He is that good to go high. And honestly, there are a lot of teams in the top half that could benefit from this kind of D tackle. Jerzon Newton, sorry, I didn't even say who we're covering. I'm so sorry. Jerzon Newton. He's kind of small for a D tackle, but boy, is he mighty. I like him a lot. What did you have to say about Jerzon?
I comped him to Javon Hargrave. So Hargrave 6'2", 300. Jerzon Newton is 6'2", 295. So Javon Hargrave played for the Steelers for a little bit in a 3-4 system. And then once he got into that one-gap scheme with the Eagles and then now the 49ers, man, he's wrecking havoc, right? So I have Jerzon Newton, his best fits to the Vikings and to the Broncos. He's a slasher. He wrecked the Penn State game. Even though Penn State ended up winning, he wrecked it just from the inside. He gets off blocks so easily. He gets up the field. He's really quick with his hands. He has a lot of tools in his tool belt to rush the passer for sure. He's quick and violent. So you want him in an aggressive upfield scheme. I think about the Vikings with Brian Flores there. I think he's going to love that kind of guy, right? He's Flores is a blitzer. He's very aggressive. I think he wants that kind of guy there. And the Broncos, listen, I think they need a lot of help along the D-line. I think they're missing some pass rush there for sure. We like some of their outside linebackers that they have, but in terms from the inside, I think Jerzon Newton can do a lot for you. And again, he's a game wrecker. That's what you want. from the D tackle position. There aren't many of them. If you look at Jalen Carter last year, even Kalijah Cansey was really small, if you remember covering him. But somehow he snuck his way.
I think 6 foot flat.
6 foot. But he snuck his way into the first round, I believe, to the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
So, and that's rare to find a guy who can rush a passer from the inside and be very, very productive. So, we'll see. We'll see where he goes. If teams view him more as a 1-gap or 2-gap guy, but I think he's more of a 1-gap guy, getting up the field a little bit and providing some pressure that way. So,
let's go Byron Murphy the second. If there's a few words that I can use to describe him, I'd say game wrecker. He's very similar in that way to Jerzon Newton and how he can just apply himself to be the guy that you have to worry about on the defense. And that's impressive because he's even, well, not weight-wise, but size-wise, he's smaller than Jerzon Newton. Geno Atkins is a great comp here. I can see the Bengals and the Seahawks both taking him. The scary thing about Byron Murphy, I don't know if it's in your notes or not because I'm not looking. He did play a defensive end. He kind of lines up everywhere. And I don't know. I think Jerzon will go pretty high. But Byron Murphy has the potential to also go in the first round, which is not common for D tackles to go high, but he's very good for what he does.
Especially with this size. I mean, people love D tackles, need D tackles, but like this new age kind of D tackle or guys that are a little bit shorter, right? 6'2" Newton, Byron Murphy is 6'1". But the advantage here is that if you're really strong and you're violent and you're quick and you're 6'2", 6'1", you can get under the pad level of a lot of these interior guys. That could really be an advantage. Maybe not quite the advantage for run stuffing, but getting upfield quickly, that's an advantage. So for Byron Murphy, what I've seen from him, he's quick enough to beat those guards. He has some really great pass rush moves. He's actually number 18 on Feldman's freak list, if you guys ever look at that. So a very twitched up kind of athlete. Something that's very impressive that stuck out to me is he was playing, I believe, left defensive end on running play to the opposite side of him. And he just kind of snuck his way to the other side of the field, just engaging, disengaging, and caught the running back. It was quick enough to catch the running back before he got to the next level. So he's aggressive too, and he's a gamer. So I think someone like him, he's not just going to flash. I think he's going to play hard too. I think that's he could be a guy that gets drafted above Jerzon Newton. So.
Yeah. And I'm going to add this to him and another guy that we're going to talk about, and a lot of Texas guys will end up talking about on the defense. Yeah, they lost to Washington, whatever. That was not the biggest game of their season. I would argue that it was in Tuscaloosa, playing in Tuscaloosa against a top-ranked Tide, and they just absolutely had Milroe panicked that whole game, rushing him, throwing big bodies at him. They know how to play at a high level in the big game. You can't teach that. You cannot teach that. That is just something that they just have instinctually to say, I'm going to take this game over. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to disrupt it. My team needs something. And Byron Murphy is probably the best of some of those Texas defenders to me in terms of how much of a freak he is. I didn't know he was on Feldman's freak list. I need to go back and look at that. But that doesn't shock me. Speaking of people that are kind of shocking, Mason Smith. I don't love Mason Smith. I think he's okay, but I can see the pro comp of Kalai Campbell. And it really makes sense for a 6'6", 315, kind of more prototypical D tackle. It would absolutely make sense for the Packers. The Packers are known for drafting defense. They're known for drafting these guys they think can prove at the next level. The Jags need it too. Their front four is okay. Trayvon Walker is all right. I don't love his production, Kyle. I know he didn't play all season, but I don't love his production, and that concerns me.
Yeah. Speaking of guys on Feldman's freak list, he was number 17. So he He is a good athlete, a very good athlete. What I saw from him is he's not much of a pass rusher, right? So can he develop that? For sure. But I think what his goal is at the next level is to do what he did in LSU, and that was not getting moved. A lot of him was guards, tackles trying to move him off his spot, and he's just like, nope, like you're not going to move me. And especially for a two gap kind of guy in a 3-4 defense, that's important. If you can take up two blockers, not get moved, what does that do? That opens up space for your linebackers a little bit to get in there and make some tackles in the backfield, to slice in their gaps and do their job better. So I think that's where he's going to have his career at, is more of a two-gap kind of system. But yeah, I mean, he's a freak of an athlete, I'm sure, but the injuries is something that is disturbing, and will probably lower him a little bit. And then again, like pass rushing moves aren't really there right now. So if you can't do both, that decreases your value a little bit. But if a team falls in love with you and really needs that 3-4 kind of defensive end, then you might be in luck. So I put the Packers there because, like you said, they just love these guys. I love them, and I put the Jaguars there because Calais Campbell was on the Jaguars at one point. So if they ever wanted, kind of a guy like him, so that's where he's at. I think he has potential to get better for sure. We'll see if injuries hamper him at the next level or not.
The next guy is probably. Oh, he shouldn't say edge on there. Why does that say edge on there? I'm gonna fix that real quick, and then I'm.
You can do whatever you want.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of true. My favorite guy on here. Sorry, I did change your best fits because Terrence Cody. If anybody is going to draft a Terrence Cody, it's going to be the stupid Ravens. They're going to pick him up in the second round. They're going to draft an edge rusher in the first round and say, "Yep, we're good. No other problems on our team." And it's just those two things. We don't need a tackle because two of our tackles are getting old, or our inside guys that are going to be free agents. Let's take defense. So Tavondre Sweat. If you guys don't know Terrence Cody was an absolute force at Alabama. Huge guy. What was Cody's stats? I bet you have it on here.
His height and weight?
355. I knew they were close.
Yeah.
Tavondre Sweat could absolutely be that guy at the next level. Mount Cody did play for the Ravens in his professional career, was key for that Super Bowl win over the 49ers. I like these guys. Now I know everybody craps all over them. He's too big, he's too fat, he's too whatever. But if you can still be productive, if you can still disrupt the game, I don't care how big you are. The bigger the better, baby. Throw him in there. We got no problems. And I love your fits. Those are good fits for this style of big D tackle.
Yeah, I mean the weight is an issue. I don't think he's gotten weighed quite yet. We don't really know what his specific weight is. I mean, for a guy that's 360, that's so hard to keep up with that weight. Like it's incredibly hard. So I think probably what's better for him is to lose a few pounds, not because like he's bad with those extra pounds, just because it's probably a little bit more, a little easier to manage, right?
Probably like 330.
Yeah, maybe 330, 340. We'll see what happens with him if he can keep that weight on and then still like have good conditioning. So that's probably the biggest talking point with him. But he is productive for being a nose tackle. He's a great leader, got great personality, very energetic. You can see it on the tape. Will have to be a scheme fit for sure. But listen, nose tackles aren't for everybody, okay? And they're probably never going to be drafted inside the top 5 because they're not going to play every down. But guys like him, guys like Jordan Davis for the Eagles, like once you see a guy that massive and who's also a special athlete and also productive and also flashy, it's hard for some teams to pass him up. I'm a big believer that if Jordan Davis did not get drafted by the Eagles, if they did not trade up in front of the Ravens probably would have drafted Jordan Davis. Yeah, However, they got the better thing out of it. They got Kyle Hamilton, who's an All-Pro already, so they did well there. But this is definitely a Ravens type of guy for sure. I can see them drafting him, but we'll just see with his weight. That'll be interesting to see. But I'm excited to see where he goes. I think he's a heck of a player.
Mm-hmm. Leonard Taylor. But before The rising of other guys, I might have said he was D tackle or D lineman number 2 behind Jerzon Newton, but production was a problem. I don't hate him though. He has put on some weight, made him a little more stout against the run. Powerful guy. I think I agree to your point that he could be better in the NFL. Who takes the real shot on him is the question. The Cowboys make sense. They like their D linemen, they really do. Steelers make sense. You got some dudes on that line that are getting really old and not going to do it forever. Sheldon Richardson, I like the pro comp. It's pretty close in height and weight, isn't it?
Yep.
I think most of yours are. I'm not even going to look anymore because I know you're spot on with them.
Richardson was 6'3", 290. So, but I do think Leonard Taylor should lose a few pounds to play a little bit quicker. So if he gets down to that 290 level, I think he could be a little bit more productive rushing the passer.
Yeah.
He's a little slower with his added weight on. But, guys like him, and a few guys that we'll talk about here in a second, they have the traits, right? And that does carry you to an effect, to a degree. Like Mozzie Smith last year, he has the traits, he has the height, the weight, the freakiness about him, but the production wasn't there. But he got drafted in the first round, and did he do anything his first year? He did not. Nothing at all. However, there is still potential for him to develop into those traits.
Well, yeah, but Kyle, look where he got drafted. That's part of the problem.
Right. I mean, I think they expected a lot more out of him, and he just did not produce. So, Leonard Taylor, another guy that has good size, good traits. He's strong. He could withstand to lose a few more pounds, but he has the traits that you want. It's just are you going to bank on those traits carrying you, and what team is willing to do that? So we'll see if he tests really well. He could rise up, and some team will be aggressive and get him. But production has not been there, and that concerns me.
Agreed. Rook Ahorhoro. What a fun name. Anyways, I like him a lot. My only concern is what you already put in your notes. He's very new to football. But that was, and I'm going to make a case for him real quick, and then I'll let you take over with the actual smart guy stuff. But listen, I don't care if you're new to football. It's all about how well you learn and how much is happening up here. Because you and I talked a lot about George Karlaftis a couple years ago being new to football, but boy, did he understand the game so well that he's doing pretty well with the Chiefs now. It doesn't, I don't care how long you've been playing football. It has everything to do with how well you play it when you learn. And he's pretty good. I love the fits too. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he has a very, very rare blend of size, strength, athleticism. When you watch him on film, man, he shows a lot of really good flashes. He needs to get more consistent. He has missed 8 games in his career. That's a little concerning. Like you said, he's new to football, but man, I think he has a lot of upside. I mean, look at him. He looks like the Hulk. I mean, he's massive. I think he has a lot of potential. And if someone can, work on him, teach him how to play the position, obviously I think the Bills have a lot of success with their defensive guys. Sean McDermott knows what he's doing. And then the Chiefs, I mean, look what Spags did to that defense, Spagnuolo. I mean, he made that defense into one of the best defenses in the league. And Chris Jones is probably on his way out. And he kind of does remind me a little bit of Charles Omenihu, who just tore his ACL. So maybe they want, someone like that again. So I think he could rise his way into a day 2 kind of pick.
Makes sense to me. Mekhi Wingo, another one of those guys. That's one of those new age DTs, like you're talking about, kind of smaller, faster. Grady Jarrett is great. You and I have talked about Grady Jarrett before. If he has anywhere near that upside, you are getting the most out of Mekhi Wingo.
Yeah.
Again, the production bothers me because LSU had a pretty decent season. There's no reason for all these guys that are supposed to be big name guys to not be producing in an SEC defense. Like that concerns me. Like, this is not the 2011 defense, 2012 defense. Like, it's just concerning that there's not production from your big guys.
Yeah, he is interesting. Like you said, production not quite there. He only played 7 games this year. The arms, he doesn't have the longest arms. That's a little concerning. However, like we talked about earlier, some traits are there. Some team's going to fall in love with him based on his ability to get upfield to rush the passer. But if he does not get stronger, if he does not get better with his hands, he's not going to be able to get off blocks at the next level in the run game. So, he's going to have to really, really work on it, work on his game to take it to the next level. But I have the Jets here just because I think they love investing into the D-line. And if he does have that upside, right, if he reaches that upside, to pair him with Quinn Williams would be nice. And then the Titans, I think they just could use a lot of help everywhere. To pair him with Jeffrey Simmons there, I think makes a lot of sense, right? So if he can rise to the ability that we think he can get, if he can get there, to pair him up with either Quentin Williams or Jeffrey Simmons, I think could be a really great duo. That's kind of where I was thinking with that one.
That makes sense. Michael Hall Jr. I thought he was going to go back with everybody else because most Ohio State guys came back. And I get it. You've lost to Michigan for the past 3 – it is 3 years. Wow. You've lost for the past 3 years. You haven't gotten the playoff berth that you're looking for. You have just kind of been pushed to the side. I get it. They want to win one. They want to get in there. They want to do something. And it should help that they now have quarterback Julian Sayin, who has a great chance to be the starter. Anyways, Michael Hall. Again, one of those smaller guys. I like the fits specifically for the Falcons. You and I just talked about that. Grady Jarrett is starting
30.
to get
Yeah,
old.
30.
Yeah. He's not going to do it forever. Honestly, it's kind of sad that they haven't really helped him sooner. But I love the Falcons pick there. Rams make sense too, but Falcons, I think I'm leaning more towards because of the age of some of their predominant players.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, I forget who Ohio State played, but Michael Hall, I think as like a true sophomore, as a freshman, he really flashed. Like, he was like, oh, this guy is going to be the next thing. And he hasn't quite gotten there. So that's it's interesting. It's concerning. Usually those Ohio State guys, once they are kind of labeled that way, they usually rise to the occasion and become that. It's rare when they don't. So I think the traits are there. The athleticism is there. The length, the flexibility. I don't think he's quite lived up to what all he has in his body. Right, production's not quite there, but there is opportunity and there's potential to get better. So I think in a one-gap scheme, that's where he's going to be at. Again, has had a lot of flashes, but he's just not quite consistent enough. So you're kind of hoping that he turns that around, and he finds more consistency at the next level, and he could be one of those guys that's just better in the NFL than he was in college.
That makes sense. Let's talk about Tyler Davis. Here's another one of those situations of you and I spent a couple years talking about the guys coming out of Clemson, how they were going to be great, how that's what I almost said Jimbo Fisher. Wow, I'm losing it. Head coach.
Dabo.
That he hung his hat on and said, this is going to be the bread and butter of Clemson is going to be the defense. And we've seen a lot of guys that we talk about every year coming out of Clemson. However, I don't feel like I'm as impressed with Tyler Davis. I think he'll be okay. He's a day 3 guy. Panthers. Excuse me. I like the Panthers fit. Dave Canales is probably going to look at some stuff that's going to be quarterback friendly, and one of the most quarterback friendly things you can do is create pass rush and better defense for your young quarterback so that he is not on the field constantly slinging the ball 50, 60 times a game, which is unheard of, by the way. If he's doing that, oh my God. But just the point of you don't want to leave him out to dry. Tyler Davis, however, has those. Let me put it up there before I say it. Has those athletic traits that could potentially make him a good player. But the problem is, again, with most of these guys in the back end, production. And I'm going to stick to that because you don't scare me. There's a bunch of guys at the top half that look way better than you. What's the reason? Why are we buying into Tyler Davis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the reason to get bought in, he's more of a run stuffer. I think some teams need that. However, I think with one of the former Clemson guys, Christian Wilkins, Wilkins is 6'4", 315. That's a really good size for a D tackle at the next level. He's 6'2", 300, right? So for being a run stuffer, he's a little bit smaller. So it's not tremendous. He has shorter arms. That's not tremendous. And he's had injuries. So he could be a guy that falls a little bit based on his injury history, based on his measurables, and then also just not being the height, weight kind of that you want for the type of player that he is. So I think there's a lot of hype around him the last couple of years, but he didn't produce. He's gotten injured, so his stock's going to take a little bit of a hit, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Whoa, that freaked out. So sorry. Chris Jenkins. Again, somebody else that I would have said, had we talked about this a couple months ago, would probably have been higher up on the list. And specifically more for what he can bring to the table than – I'm not even going to say production anymore. I've said production probably 14 times in this video. You could make a whole reel of me just saying production. I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is Sharif Floyd is a really good pro comp for him. The Eagles make sense 100 billion, 1,000%. The Eagles make sense for this because you need it. You need help with Jalen Carter. You need the assist there. Linebacker. You can still address linebacker, but this makes sense for the Eagles. Panthers, same reason I brought up for the Panthers. I'm gonna let you take over because I lost my place. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, his daddy played for the Panthers. Chris Jenkins Sr. He was much bigger and much more productive, much more of a run stuffer. Sharif Floyd, I comped him there. The height, weight similar. Sharif Floyd, 6'3", 297. And Floyd had a lot of athletic traits too coming out. And in the NFL, he just didn't pan out. Injuries, other things happened, so he had to exit his career pretty early. But the athleticism and the flashes are there. So he was number 6 on Feldman's freak list. So again, I kind of comp him a little bit to Mozzie Smith as well, just because the athleticism is there, the traits are there, the height, the weight, the speed are there, but why are you not putting it together? That's a question. He's not great with his hands. He does not provide much in the pass rush game right now. However, he's a project. Like, if you can get him to use his hands better, if he knows what he's doing in his pass rush plan, he can get better. So I wouldn't expect him to come in right away and be a DT1, but a guy that, maybe you draft on the end of day 2 or early day 3, like a 4th round pick, someone that can come in, be a backup, provide some juice to your defensive line in situations, but then also has the ability to potentially be a DT 2 or 1 based on his athletic traits. So a lot of guys on this list right now that have the traits that you want, but can they put it all together at the next level?
Dwayne Carter. I'm going to be honest. I thought we were talking basketball for a minute because it's not often that Duke or Kansas make a whole list on star players. Dwayne Carter, 6'3", 305. He's kind of in between. He's not that big, massive D tackle, but he's also not that little tiny D tackle. I wasn't sure how I felt about him when we were originally talking about him. He's a good run defender. You just talked about how defenses kind of need that, and that would be important. We've already talked about the Vikings front four aging. Daniel Hunter is a free agent, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I expect, side note, and then I'll let you take over. I expect to see a whole new Vikings team next year because of who all is on the free agency list. So it would make sense for them to go out and draft a whole bunch of young guys because I think they move on from Cousins. I think they move on from Daniel Hunter. I think they move on from some of those guys that are going to start pushing their cap a little bit towards yucky spots because what do you do? So Dwayne Carter makes sense. Chargers that make sense too. Yeah, go ahead. I need to look at something before I speak.
Yeah, I think he's just. I think he's more of a run stuffer. I don't think he's ever going to be the elite pass rush guy, but he needs work there. But he has a great, like I said before, if we use this lingo, these terms, high motor, high IQ, like teams love that, and they want that, especially on their D line. Because listen, if you can't rush the passer, you best bust your butt to get down the field, make a play, or clean up something, and maybe someone else had a good pressure, had a good hurry, and you're there to clean it up just because you're that aggressive, you're that energetic, you're that you play with that aggressiveness and motor. I think teams will like that. So I think he does have a little bit of juice. We need to see more, but I like him. I think he could be a little bit of a project, a guy that comes in, gets drafted on day 3 and does play right away and becomes a good depth piece for a team.
For sure. Speaking of guys that will probably be depth pieces for teams, we're getting to the bottom of the barrel here, guys. Braden Fisk, you might know his uncle. He's in Daredevil. If you don't know, I'm sorry. I had to. A D tackle, 6'5", 297. This is more of the prototypical D tackle guy. 6 sacks. That's pretty decent. If I'm thinking correctly, that's almost as much as Jerzon Newton had with Illinois. I think he had 7.5. That's not bad. He came from Western Michigan and Florida State. I know there were concerns that he wasn't going to adjust very well, and he seems to have done just fine at Florida State. Jared Odrick makes sense. The Steelers make sense more than anything else for this pick to me. Because it's, how do I say this without being like, he doesn't know anything. It's a very Steelers pick. Have we used that phrase before on something? Like it's a very this team pick.
Steelers pick, and it's a Green Bay pick, I think, too.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 24 years old, so he's very advanced right now. He dominated at Western Michigan. And then, like you said, produced pretty well at Florida State. So he doesn't have the elite quickness that you want, but great motor. He transitioned well from Western Michigan to Florida State. He's productive. Might not be a one-gap DT, but so far what I've heard from him at the Senior Bowl is that he's doing pretty well, and he's making some splash plays. So, I think he could be an underrated guy. And again, 24 years old, you're probably ready to step in and play in the NFL, spend some time there, and maybe not get the sacks or TFLs that you want, but at least step on the field and provide something right off the bat in your early NFL career. So we are getting near the bottom of the barrel here. Overall, I don't think the defensive end and D tackle group is the most insane out of this class. If we haven't talked about it before, I think receivers and offensive line are probably the biggest wins of this draft. Yep. Linebackers, actually, there's a lot of good linebackers too. So
I would argue for QB because there's more than 2. So
yeah, decent QB draft as well. But yeah, I mean, D-line definitely has some interesting guys for sure. A lot of weird, different body types, a lot of traits, but not much production. After Braden Fisk here, I don't know if there's many guys worth talking about. So defensive end and D tackle, the guys that we went over, we were kind of getting to the bottom of the barrel. I
Yeah.
think for sure already. So,
Yep.
yeah, I'm excited to see where these guys go, how they do in the Senior Bowl, and then how they do in the Combine, which we are going to. So.
Also, as a last note, if you missed at the beginning, next week we are doing linebackers and Senior Bowl coverage. Please don't miss. We both love the Senior Bowl. I think we spent most of our day watching clips on Twitter, YouTube, wherever we could watch something
Yeah.
and just kind of chatting back and forth. So don't miss it. We do love it. We will give you the best of what we can of our thoughts on it, but we will see you guys next week.
See ya.